Day Earth discovered it wasn't alone should have been cause for celebration. Instead, it marked the beginning of humanity's greatest challenge. Admiral Kim stood at the massive view screen in Earth Command, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display of approaching alien vessels. The ships, sleek, angular, and clearly built for war, moved with purpose toward Earth's orbital defense perimeter. "They're ignoring our hails again, sir," reported Officer Tay, her fingers flying across the communication panel. "Seventh attempt, same result." Kim nodded grimly. Intelligence had identified the newcomers as representatives of something called the hegemony, a coalition of alien species that had been steadily expanding through nearby star systems. Their pattern was always the same: arrive, overwhelm, colonize. "Me through on all channels, all languages we've decoded from their transmissions," Kim ordered. When the connection opened, Kim spoke with the calm authority that had defined his 30-year military career. "Attention, hegemony vessels. You are approaching restricted space. Your current course violates the Sol System Security Treaty. Change course immediately, or we will be forced to respond." On the bridge of the hegemony flagship, Supreme Commander Jado clicked his four mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Voss, studied the primitive human broadcasts with mild curiosity. "They believe they can resist," Jado noted with amusement. "How charming." Voss wasn't so dismissive. "The intelligence reports indicate they've survived multiple near-extinction events of their own making. Such species often develop unexpected adaptations. They use chemical rockets and simple ion drives," Jado replied dismissively. "They haven't even conquered their own moon. Proceed as planned." Back on Earth, the tension in command became unbearable as the alien vessels crossed the clearly marked boundary line. "They're inside the perimeter," Captain Park announced, looking to Admiral Kim for orders. Kim took a deep breath. Humanity had prepared for this moment since the first faint alien signals were detected decades ago. "Deploy warning shots. Pattern Delta. Let's show them we're serious without starting a war." Earth's orbital defense platforms hummed to life, each firing precisely calculated bursts that detonated in brilliant flashes just ahead of the lead hegemony ships. The message was unmistakable: come no further. For a moment, it seemed to work. The alien fleet paused its advance. Then, without warning, the smallest hegemony vessel fired on the nearest defense platform, obliterating it in a spectacular explosion. "Platform 7 is gone," Officer Tay reported, her voice steady despite the shock. 83 personnel lost. The room fell silent. Earth had just suffered its first casualties in an interstellar war. Kim's next orders came without hesitation. Defensive pattern Omega. Limited engagement. Show them we can bite back. Earth's remaining platforms and patrol ships responded with precise measured force, targeting only the ship that had fired first. The alien vessel's shields flared brilliant blue before failing altogether, allowing Earth's weapons to tear through its hull. On his flagship, Jado watched in disbelief as one of his scout ships broke apart under the human counterattack. These primitives weren't supposed to have weapons capable of penetrating hegemony shields. Something was very wrong. "Full retreat," he ordered, surprising his bridge crew. "Regroup at the designated coordinates." As the hegemony fleet rapidly withdrew to the edge of the solar system, a tense quiet settled over Earth Command. "They'll be back," Kim said, breaking the silence. "And in much greater numbers." General Lee, who had been silently observing from the back of the room, stepped forward. "Then it's time. Contact the Security Council immediately." Kim nodded, knowing what this meant. "And the Jovian shipyards?" "Yes," Lee confirmed. "Begin supercarrier activation protocols, all 5 of them." Word spread quickly through the command center, hushed whispers giving way to expressions of awe and trepidation. The supercarriers, humanity's greatest secret and most powerful weapons, had never been deployed before. Built in hidden facilities around Jupiter's moons over the past 30 years, they represented everything humanity had learned about war throughout its bloody history, combined with technological breakthroughs kept hidden from public knowledge. As emergency meetings convened, In capitals across the globe, humanity prepared for what was coming. The hegemony had expected an easy conquest of a technologically inferior species. What they would get instead was a demonstration of humanity's greatest talent, turning the art of war into a terrible science. In his private quarters, Admiral Kim looked at an old photo of his family before sending the final authorization code. The Supercarriers would be awakened, and with them, the galaxy would learn why humans had survived everything their harsh world had thrown at them for hundreds of thousands of years. The war was just beginning, but if the plan worked, it would, and almost as quickly as it started. 30 years of secrecy were about to end. Deep within the Jovian defense complex hidden among the moons of Jupiter, Admiral Bay received the activation codes with a mix of pride and dread. For decades, humanity had poured its resources, brightest minds, and cutting-edge technology into creating 5 vessels unlike anything the solar system or perhaps the galaxy had ever seen. "Begin warm-up sequences," Bay ordered, his voice echoing through the command center carved into Europa's icy crust. Officer Sung nodded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Transmitting activation signals to all 5 bays, sir." On the main view screen, 5 separate docking facilities hidden around Jupiter's moons began to show signs of activity. Massive doors that had remained sealed for years slowly parted, revealing glimpses of the behemoths within. "Send the command crews to their vessels," Bay continued. "All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill." Across the Jovian system, shuttles carried the carefully selected officers and crew members who would bring the supercarriers to life. Many had trained their entire careers in simulators, knowing they might never see real combat. Now they would be the first humans to take these revolutionary warships into battle. Commander Song stepped onto the bridge of the UES Thermopylae, the flagship of humanity's secret fleet, and felt a chill run down her spine. The bridge was unlike any conventional warship, designed not just for direct combat, but for orchestrating a symphony of destruction on a scale previously unimaginable. "Status report," Song demanded as her crew settled into their stations. "Fusion. Reactors at 30% and climbing," replied the chief engineer. "Drone fabrication systems online. Dimensional field generators warming up. Weapons grid running diagnostics." Song nodded, taking her place in the command chair. The Thermopylae wasn't just big, it was revolutionary. While traditional warships carried fixed armaments, the supercarriers housed automated factories that could produce combat drones by the thousands. Each drone was smarter and more maneuverable than any fighter pilot, capable of coordinating through quantum communication networks that couldn't be jammed or intercepted. All personnel accounted for, her executive officer reported. Crew at battle stations. Outside, the massive vessel began to emerge from its dock, nearly 8 kilometers long and shaped like a flattened arrowhead. The Thermopylae dwarfed every spacecraft humans had ever built. Its hull gleamed with a strange, shifting material that absorbed rather than reflected light, the product of reverse-engineered technology from a crashed alien scout ship found in the Arctic ice decades earlier. Similar scenes played out across Jupiter's moons as the UES Trafalgar, Normandy, Midway, and Lady Gulf awakened from their slumber. Each carrier specialized in different aspects of warfare, but all shared the same revolutionary technologies: reality-bending FTL drives, automated manufacturing systems, and weapons that manipulated gravity, electromagnetic fields, and even the fabric of space-time itself. Admiral Bay watched from his command post as all 5 ships cleared their docks. "Magnificent," he whispered, momentarily allowing himself to appreciate the achievement. These vessels represented not just military might, but humanity's ability to unite when faced with an existential threat. The construction of the supercarriers had begun after the discovery of alien signals 3 decades ago. Earth's nations, realizing the potential danger, had set aside their differences to work on a defense system that could protect the entire planet. The project had remained hidden from public knowledge, funded through black budgets and disguised as deep space research. "We have confirmation from Earth Command," Officer Sung announced. "The hegemony fleet is massing at the edge of the solar system. Intelligence estimates over 2,000 vessels." The number should have been terrifying, but Admiral Bay merely nodded. Then it's time to show them what we've built. Aboard the Thermopylae, Commander Song received the deployment orders. Set course for the outer system, she instructed her navigation officer. Prepare dimensional drives for activation. As the 5 supercarriers moved into formation, their enormous engines began to glow with an eerie blue light. Unlike conventional drives that pushed against reality, the dimensional engines folded space around the vessels, allowing them to cross vast distances almost instantly. All carriers report ready, Admiral, Sung reported. Bay took a deep breath. Then let's introduce ourselves to the hegemony. Activate dimensional drives. The 5 carriers seemed to stretch for a moment, as if being pulled in impossible directions before vanishing in flashes of blue light that momentarily outshone Jupiter itself. In the vast emptiness beyond Neptune's orbit, where the hegemony armada gathered for their assault on Earth, 5 blue ruptures tore open the fabric of space. The supercarriers emerged, their massive forms dwarfing even the largest alien vessels. On the hegemony command ship, Supreme Commander Jado stared in disbelief at the human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. "What are those?" he demanded. His tactical officer struggled to provide answers. Unknown configuration. Size exceeds any known human construction capability. Energy readings? Impossible. Jado's mandibles clicked nervously. They're bluffing. They must be hollow shells meant to intimidate us. Aboard the Thermopylae, Commander Song gave the order that would change the course of the war, and humanity's place in the galaxy. Forever. Deploy first wave of combat drones. All carriers, commence Operation Thunderstrike. The sides of each supercarrier opened like blooming flowers, revealing launch bays that stretched for kilometers. From these openings poured streams of light, tens of thousands of autonomous combat drones, each more advanced than the best fighters in the hegemony fleet. The real battle was about to begin. Captain June of the hegemony flagship Dominance had conquered 17 planetary systems across his long career. He had faced desperate last stands, suicide attacks, and even primitive nuclear weapons. Nothing had prepared him for what emerged from the human supercarriers. "What are those?" he demanded, mandibles clicking rapidly as his tactical display transformed from orderly formation markers into a chaotic swarm of red dots. His sensor officer worked frantically at her station. "Combat drones, Captain. Tens of thousands. No, hundreds of thousands from each carrier." Her voice cracked with disbelief. "The numbers keep increasing." June fought to maintain his composure. The initial 5 human vessels suddenly seemed much more threatening as each disgorged what appeared to be an endless stream of smaller craft. The tactical display looked like 5 hurricanes of red dots spiraling outward, each one controlled with impossible precision. "Ready main batteries," he ordered. "Target the carrier on the left flank. All ships concentrate fire." Aboard the UES Normandy, Lieutenant Yoon watched calmly as enemy targeting systems locked onto his vessel. As the supercarrier's drone coordinator, he didn't command from a traditional bridge. Instead, he sat within a spherical chamber, known as the hive mind, surrounded by floating holographic interfaces showing real-time battle data from millions of perspectives simultaneously. "They're targeting us," he noted to his team of neural-linked operators. "Predictable." The 8 men and women seated around him nodded almost in unison, their thoughts partly merged with the ship's tactical systems through their neural interfaces. Each controller managed tens of thousands of drones, guiding them with thought alone through the quantum network that connected everything in the human fleet. Implementing Maneuver Typhoon, Yoon decided. Let's show them what we can do. Outside, the swarm of drones surrounding the Normandy shifted formation with fluid grace. What had appeared to be a chaotic cloud revealed itself as something far more dangerous. A perfectly coordinated defensive screen, with each drone positioned with millimeter precision. The hegemony fleet opened fire, hundreds of energy beams converging on the Normandy. Light bloomed across space as the drones intercepted the attacks, thousands sacrificing themselves to absorb the incoming fire. Yet for each drone destroyed, 3 more launched from the carrier's manufacturing bays. The onboard factories working at full capacity to replace losses instantly. "No effect," reported the hegemony weapons officer, disbelief evident in his voice. Their defensive screen is regenerating faster than we can deplete it. Captain June slammed his primary hand against his command console. Impossible. No species can produce combat craft that quickly. On the UES Trafalgar, Commander Han watched the battle unfold with cool efficiency. Unlike the other carriers' defensive approach, the Trafalgar specialized in boarding and capture operations. Deploy infiltrator swarms, Han ordered. Target their support vessels first. From the Trafalgar's launch bays emerged a different type of drone, smaller, stealthier, and equipped with advanced cutting tools and hacking systems. These drones accelerated toward the rear of the hegemony formation, where the supply ships and troop carriers clustered. The alien commanders never saw them coming. By the time alarms sounded, thousands of infiltrator drones had attached themselves to hull plates, cutting through metal with molecular disassemblers and slipping into ventilation systems. "We have breaches across multiple decks," came the panicked report from a hegemony supply vessel. "Small machines everywhere. They're taking control of our—" The transmission cut off abruptly. One by one, the support ships fell silent, their systems hijacked by human programming that spread through alien networks like a digital plague. Within minutes, 30 hegemony vessels had been captured intact, their crews contained behind sealed bulkheads as atmosphere was selectively vented from combat sections. Supreme Commander Jado, watching from his command dreadnought, could hardly process what he was seeing. His carefully arranged formation, the product of thousands of years of hegemony military doctrine, was falling apart. "Order the heavy destroyers forward," he commanded, desperation creeping into his voice. "Target their largest carrier with all antimatter weaponry." The center of the hegemony line surged forward, massive warships moving into position for a concentrated strike against the UES Thermopylae. If they could destroy just one carrier, perhaps they could turn the tide. Admiral Bay, watching from the Thermopylae's command bridge, smiled slightly. "They're following the expected playbook, reactive rather than adaptive." "They're bringing their heavy destroyers into range, sir," reported his tactical officer. Bay nodded. "Perfect. Deploy the gravity wells from concealed ports along the Thermopylaes." Hull, dozens of spherical objects launched into space. To hegemony sensors, they appeared as simple mines or defensive buoys. The truth was far more devastating. As the alien destroyers approached firing position, the devices activated. Space itself seemed to warp around them as concentrated gravitational fields thousands of times stronger than a black hole's event horizon suddenly materialized across the enemy formation. Ships closer to the devices were crushed instantly, their hulls compressing into unrecognizable masses of metal. Those at the periphery were torn apart as gravitational shear forces pulled them in different directions simultaneously. The formation that had represented the elite of the hegemony fleet vanished in moments, leaving nothing but debris and expanding clouds of radiation. On the bridge of his dreadnought, Supreme Commander Jado stared in horror at the tactical display. A third of his fleet destroyed or captured in minutes with barely a scratch on the human vessels. "How?" he whispered. "They were nothing but a primitive backwater species. Our intelligence said they barely had interplanetary capability." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Voss, looked up from emergency reports flooding in from surviving ships. "It appears, Commander, that they were expecting us, perhaps for a very long time." Jado's compound eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. "They built those carriers in secret. They knew we were coming." Across 5 human supercarriers, officers shared the same thought. The hegemony had gravely underestimated humanity. The battle wasn't just beginning, it was already won. Now it was just a matter of how quickly they could end it. "Begin primary containment procedures," Admiral Bay ordered from the Thermopylae's command bridge. His voice carried the weight of someone who understood the historic importance of what was unfolding. "Coordinate with all carriers. Execute the checkmate protocol." The 5 supercarriers moved into new positions, their massive forms gliding through space with impossible grace for objects of their size. The UES Thermopylae remained at the center, while the other 4 vessels spread out to form a massive pentagon around the fragmented hegemony fleet. 2 hours had passed since the battle began. The once proud alien armada was in disarray, having lost nearly half its ships with little to show for it. Not a single human carrier had sustained significant damage. Aboard the UES Midway, Commander Day watched the enemy's increasingly desperate attempts to penetrate her vessel's defenses. The Midway specialized in defensive systems, its adaptive shield technology making it virtually impervious to conventional attacks. "They're trying a new approach," her tactical officer noted. "Concentrated ion cannon fire from multiple vectors." Day nodded, unconcerned. "Let the shields adapt." The space around the Midway shimmered as incoming energy blasts connected with its defensive field. Rather than trying to block the attacks, the Midway's shields analyzed the weapon signatures and reconfigured to absorb the energy, actually growing stronger with each hit. "Shields at 116% capacity," reported the defense officer. "We're gaining more power than they're depleting." Day allowed herself a small smile. "Redirect excess power to the gravity anchor systems. Prepare to deploy on my mark." Meanwhile, the UES Leyte Gulf had moved into position behind the remaining hegemony command ships. Unlike the other carriers, the Leyte Gulf was built for surgical precision strikes rather than overwhelming force. Captain Min studied the holographic display showing the enemy flagship's internal layout, constructed from data gathered by infiltration drones. "Target their central command hub, engineering section, and primary life support," he instructed. "Prepare needle ships for launch." The Leyte Gulf's specialized weapons weren't the massive energy cannons or drone swarms used by the other carriers. Instead, it deployed slender, nearly invisible projectiles that moved at relativistic speeds, too fast to dodge or intercept. These needle ships carried specialized payloads designed to eliminate key targets with minimal collateral damage. "Needle ships, armed and ready," his weapons officer confirmed. Min nodded. "Fire." There was no visible beam or projectile, just the sudden appearance of perfectly circular holes in the hulls of 7 hegemony command ships as the needle ships punched through metal, shields, and internal structures to deliver their payloads directly to critical systems. On the hegemony flagship, Supreme Commander Jado was thrown from his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity failed. Emergency lights flickered on as primary systems went dark across the vessel. "Report," he demanded, pulling himself back to his station. "Direct hits to central power distribution and primary command networks," his second-in-command responded, voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We've lost contact with all secondary command ships. They appear to have been targeted simultaneously." Jado stared at the emergency tactical display, trying to comprehend how precisely the humans had struck. Even with their overwhelming technology, the coordination required to simultaneously disable 7 widely separated ships was beyond anything the hegemony had ever achieved. "Order a full retreat," he finally said, the words bitter in his mouth. "All ships to disengage immediately." The surviving hegemony vessels began turning away, their engines straining as they attempted to reach minimum safe distance for FTL jumps. It was their only hope of escape. Admiral Bay watched the enemy's retreat from the Thermopylae bridge, his expression neutral. "They're running," his executive officer observed. "As expected," Bay replied. "Signal all carriers to deploy gravity anchors." Across the human formation, all 5 supercarriers launched special devices that quickly positioned themselves in precise mathematical patterns around the battlefield. As the first hegemony ships attempted to activate their FTL drives, the devices powered up. Space itself seemed to thicken around the fleeing vessels. Their engines glowed brighter as they struggled against the suddenly heavy fabric of reality. But it was useless. The gravity anchors had created a localized field that prevented faster-than-light travel, trapping the alien fleet in normal space. "They're contained," Bay noted with satisfaction. "Now we finish this. Begin final assault protocol." The UES Thermopylae, flagship of humanity's secret fleet, moved forward, its massive form dwarfing even the largest remaining hegemony vessels. From recessed ports along its hull emerged devices that looked more like scientific instruments than weapons. Singularity generators at full charge, reported the weapons officer. Safety interlocks disengaged. Bay took a deep breath. These weapons represented the most devastating technology humans had ever created. Artificial black holes that could be precisely controlled and then dissipated when their work was done. Target their remaining battle groups, he ordered. Minimum, yield, maximum precision. The space ahead of the Thermopylae warped visibly as dozens of microscopic black holes formed, each one precisely aimed at a cluster of enemy ships. The effect was both beautiful and terrifying. Hegemony vessels seemed to stretch and distort as they were pulled toward these points of infinite gravity, their hulls compressing and breaking apart long before they reached the event horizons. Within minutes, another third of the alien fleet had been reduced to scattered debris. The remaining ships, now trapped and defenseless, powered down their weapon systems, the universal sign of surrender. The executive officer checked his chronometer. 2 hours and 53 minutes since engagement, Admiral. Their entire fleet has been neutralized. Bay nodded, feeling a complex mix of pride and solemn responsibility. Signal Earth Command. The 3-hour war is over. Across the 5 supercarriers, crews who had trained for decades for this moment finally allowed themselves to celebrate. Humanity had faced its first interstellar threat and emerged not just victorious, but overwhelmingly dominant. Prepare to receive prisoners, Bay ordered, and dispatch medical teams to damaged enemy vessels. We're not just showing them our strength today, we're showing them our humanity. The war was over almost as quickly as it had begun, but the consequences would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come. The observation deck of the UES Thermopylae offered a panoramic view of Earth, a blue marble suspended against the velvet darkness of space. Admiral Bay stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching his homeworld with a mixture of pride and deep reflection. Just 1 week had passed since the battle that had changed everything. "They're arriving again, sir," said Officer Sung, approaching with a data tablet. 3 more diplomatic vessels just entered the system. That makes 22 different species in the last 5 days. Bay nodded without turning. Who are they this time? The collective of Proxima, the real Confederation, and something calling itself the Ancient Concord. She paused. The last one's ship design doesn't match anything in our databases. Another previously unknown civilization, Bay mused. How many does that make now? 15, sir. Species we never knew existed until they came knocking on our door. Sung couldn't keep the amazement from her voice. They're all requesting diplomatic meetings. The aftermath of humanity's decisive victory had rippled across nearby star systems faster than anyone could have predicted. The hegemony, it turned out, had been the neighborhood bully, subjugating or intimidating dozens of other civilizations. When footage of the battle, carefully edited and broadcast by Earth's diplomatic corps, reached those worlds, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Earth was suddenly the center of a diplomatic storm, as species after species rushed to establish relations with the humans who had done the impossible. Have Ambassador Choi and her team prepare to receive them, Bay said, and make sure Supreme Commander Jado is present at the reception. That had been Bay's most controversial decision, allowing the captured hegemony commander to participate in the diplomatic proceedings. Many had wanted him tried as a war criminal, but Bay understood something crucial about what was happening. This moment wasn't just about punishing aggressors, but about reshaping the galaxy's understanding of humanity. Later that day, in the IDC hastily converted Grand Hall of the Lunar Diplomatic Center, Ambassador Choi stood before representatives of 27 different species. Some appeared almost human. Others defied description with body structures unlike anything Earth's biologists had imagined possible. Yet they all shared one thing: a newfound respect for the beings from the 3rd planet of the Sol system. "Welcome to human space," Choi began, her voice warm but carrying unmistakable authority. "A week ago, many of you didn't know we existed. Others believed us to be primitive or defenseless. Today, we gather as equals." Near the front of the assembly sat Supreme Commander Jado, his once proud posture now humbled, flanked by human security officers. His presence sent a clear message to everyone present. The conflict between humanity and the hegemony was brief but revelatory, Choi continued. It demonstrated not just our military capabilities, but our approach to interstellar relations. We built our supercarriers not from a desire for conquest but from caution, the understanding that the universe might not always be friendly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many of these species had suffered under hegemony domination for generations. The concept of building defensive capabilities before they were needed seemed revolutionary. A tall, willowy being with iridescent skin rose from the delegation. The Celestial Directory wishes to know, if humans possessed such technology, why did you not expand? Why remain hidden in your own system when you could have claimed many worlds? Choi smiled. Because expansion was never our goal. Security was. We theorized the existence of alien life long before we confirmed it. Rather than rushing outward, we chose to prepare. The being seemed puzzled. But the resources required to build your supercarriers, without a galactic empire, how did you manage such a feat? Unity, Choi replied simply. When our scientists first detected possible artificial signals from deep space 30 years ago, Earth's nations realized that our petty differences meant nothing compared to what might exist beyond our skies. We united our resources, our brightest minds, our industrial capacity, not to conquer the stars, but to ensure our place among them. Supreme Commander Jado, who had remained silent until now slowly stood. The room tensed, but Ambassador Choi nodded for him to speak. I was wrong about humans, he said, his translator conveying the humility in his voice. The hegemony believed them primitive because they had not spread beyond their system. We interpreted their caution as weakness. He turned to face the assembly. What appeared as technological inferiority was in fact strategic patience. They built 5 vessels that rendered our entire fleet, the product of 1,000 worlds, obsolete in 3 hours. His words sent another wave of murmurs through the gathered representatives. In the days that followed, Captain Jin of the UES Normandy found herself assigned to an unexpected mission. The supercarriers, their existence now known to the galaxy, were returning to their Jovian docks. All except the Normandy, which had been selected for humanity's first diplomatic tour of nearby star systems. Are you sure about this? Jin asked Admiral Bay during their final briefing, showing our most advanced technology to these new allies. Bay's expression remained thoughtful. The supercarriers served their purpose. They ended a war almost before it began. But their greater value now is symbolic. By displaying our strength while exercising restraint, we establish ourselves as neither conquerors nor victims. Jin nodded slowly, understanding the wisdom in his words. And the technology. Sharing agreements? Carefully controlled, Bay assured her. We're offering defensive systems first. Shield technology, early warning networks. The hegemony kept these worlds isolated from each other by force. We'll build connections through cooperation. As the Normandy prepared for departure, Earth continued to welcome delegations from across the galaxy. Scientists exchanged knowledge about the universe, cultural representatives shared art and history, and military advisors began discussing a new interstellar defense pact with humanity at its center. In her quarters aboard the Normandy, Captain Jin recorded her personal log, trying to capture the historic nature of what had happened. Humanity built the supercarriers believing we might someday need to fight for our survival, she dictated. Instead, they brought us peace through overwhelming strength. We ended a war in hours that might have lasted decades, but our greatest achievement wasn't destroying an enemy fleet. It was showing the galaxy that true power comes not just from technology, but from how you choose to use it. As the Normandy departed Earth orbit, carrying representatives to 12 worlds that just days earlier had been unknown to humanity, Jin watched her home planet recede in the view screen. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not through conquest but through preparation, unity, and ultimately restraint. The galaxy had noticed, and it would never be the same again.